Greetings. This is the day the Lord hath made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. On today, I want to read an excerpt from Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes, which is in its 40th anniversary edition by William Bridges. It is a book that I used during my clinical pastoral education experience. And I think it's fitting for today because we are thrust into many different types of transitions over our lifetime, and even now, today, there's so many transitions going on that we can't really keep up. So I wanted to do this reading of this excerpt and have some discussion about transitions, my sisters and brothers. Chapter 1, it says, Being in Transition. Who are you? Said the caterpillar. I hardly know, sir, just at present, Alice replied rather shyly. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then. Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. I became interested in the subject of transition when I was going through some difficult inner and outer changes. Although I gave up my teaching career because of those changes, I found myself teaching a seminar called Being in Transition, Rule Number 1. When you're in transition, you find yourself coming back in new ways to old activities. 25 The 25 adults who showed up for that course were in various states of confusion and crisis, and I was a bit at sea myself. I had, after all, left my career and moved my family to the country, where we joined several other families and formed a small community. I had set out to change my lifestyle. I had imagined, I think, that the seminar would attract mostly other ex-urbanites, and that together we could puzzle out this difficult transition. A few of these new country folks were in the class, but the mix was far richer than that. There were men and women who had recently divorced or separated. There were a couple of newlyweds, as well as some people who had remarried. One 26-year-old man who had suddenly acquired 4 children. There was a widow and several recently retired men. There was a wife of a retired man who didn't attend the seminar because his health had worsened a few weeks after his retirement. There was a woman who had just given birth to her first baby, a man who had just had a heart attack, and even a man who had recently received a big promotion at work. What is he doing here? The others asked resentfully. He doesn't have problems. There were 3 or 4 women who had just returned to college after years of raising children. There were 2 people who had just been fired. And there was a young woman who was living on her own for the first time. She was appalled to find that the rest of us, her elders, didn't have their lives in better shape. It's okay to be messing around when you're 23, she said, but I plan to get it all together by the time I'm your age. We all nodded sheepishly and admitted that we had planned that way too. At first, the seminar members were shy with each other and took refuge in the claim that they didn't really have much in common. You still have a job. Well, you're luckier. You still have your marriage. But slowly they began to discover that under the surface, their situations challenged them to deal with the same basic experience. As we listed them on the board the first night, the 3 main similarities seemed to be that we had all experienced an ending followed by a period of confusion and distress, leading to a new beginning for those who had come that far. Each person's attitude towards what we began talking about as the 3 phases of transition differed considerably, of course. Those who had chosen to make the changes that had put them into transition tended to minimize the importance of endings. It was almost as if the act of acknowledging an ending as painful was an admission that the change triggered the transition had been a mistake. On the other hand, those who had gone into transition unwillingly or unwittingly found it very hard to admit that a new beginning and a new phase of their lives might be at hand. They were as invested in seeing no good in their transition as the other group was in denying distress. But they all agreed that in the in between place was strange and confusing. They hoped to get out of it in favor of either the good old days or the brave new world as quickly as possible. We decided to study these three phases of transition, and I announced that endings would be the topic of the seminar's second session. This dismayed the new mother. "I am not sending him off to college," she said, "just trying to get used to having him." She was trying to cope with beginnings, not endings. He was, of course, a wonderful little baby, she repeated that several times, but she was having some small problems. How much should she let him cry? She asked the classmates, and how could she persuade her husband to help more? In seconds, the air was thick with advice, and we were drifting away from the ending fast. Interestingly, though, our advice was of little use because she had heard it all before, had even read most of it before the baby arrived. This upset her, and she grew angry, first with her husband and then with her mother, who hadn't told her what mothering was really like, and then with the baby, and finally with us for sitting there and nodding and acting sympathetic when you don't give a damn if I'm falling apart. And I am falling apart. It was clear that we had come a long way from that wonderful little baby that she needed a tiny bit of advice about. But we also seemed to be getting somewhere, for in the next few minutes, she talked very movingly about her life and her desire for children. She and her husband had been married for 2 years before she became pregnant, and they had been very happy together. Both of them wanted children, but each of them were startled to find a fussy new infant so intrusive and demanding. "We aren't alone together anymore," she said sadly, after her anger had passed. "I really do love my baby, but the old freedom and easiness were gone. We can't take off any longer wherever we please or even live by our own schedules. I feel like it isn't even my own life I'm living." This woman, who had wanted us to forget endings and get on to beginnings, was being confronted with the impact of several endings in her life. The problem, the problems that we hadn't been able to solve for her proved to be less important than she had first claimed. For no matter what happened to them, the underlying situation will remain. "I never thought of it this way," she said, "but now it seems to me that I've crossed some kind of threshold and there's no going back. My old life is gone. How come nobody talks about that? They congratulate you on your new life, but I have to mourn the old life alone." In fact, this wasn't so, for as soon as she had put her predicament into words, half a dozen people echoed her experience and gave their version of it. So why was it so difficult to talk about? For some people, it was the shame they felt for being sad or angry about a supposedly good thing. For others, It was remorse over lost opportunities. As for still others, it was simply the confusion and embarrassment over not being able to manage an ordinary life experience smoothly, something they had imagined that others did easily. For all these reasons, they found it hard to talk about the unexpected impact of an ending in their lives and the way in which the unacknowledged ending impeded their ability to move towards a new beginning. Just wanted to do an excerpt of this book again, Transitions Making Sense of Life's Changes. Chapter 1, we're talking about being in transition and starting with endings. Without endings, we cannot have a new beginning, and we have to sit in the ending. We have to sit in the emotion of the ending, and we have to sit with ourselves to process this ending. Maybe we have others that will be able to help us process, but what I want to suggest is sit with yourself, sit with God, and allow yourself to process the endings so that we can begin again. My brothers and my sisters, again, there are 3 phases: an ending, followed by a period of confusion and distress, then leading to new beginnings for those who have come this far. My brothers and sisters, sometimes endings are thrust upon us, or they have come and we were not expecting it. But then sometimes some people choose endings. Either way you go, you're going to have to deal with the emotional impact of the ending. And sometimes it's not that easy. It's not that good. Sometimes there's a lot of uneasiness that comes with an ending, especially if we lose a loved one that was dear to us and it was something that happened suddenly. That's a hard ending. But I promise you that as you process it, you are able to come to peace with it, and you can live in a new beginning as we process the ending and then the grief loss that comes with it. I'm just saying that we all are in transition or dealing with transitions. And please take time to just meditate on this short excerpt of this book, Transitions. Y'all be easy. Peace.